Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Cities Skylines 2, where we are going to be talking about mods today. And so let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing you need to do if you haven't dealt with mods at all is go ahead and click on this Paradox Mods button. And so if you do have mods installed, this is where it will go through any update process. It's just going to make sure that all your mods are running well. And so what's going to happen after you click on that is you are going to land on this featured page where it has this little headline up top, and then it has a few featured mods, and these are the top mods. And as you can see, I have this little check mark in the corner. I have all of them installed, and some of these are the mods that we're going to actually be diving into today. And so if you go ahead and click on Browse All, what it's going to do is bring you over to the Browse screen. And so one of the things that I do recommend within this screen is to either sort by most popular or most subscribed. What this is going to do is it's going to filter out a lot of the mods that could cause problems within your city. This leads me to my first disclaimer. Once you start playing with mods, it is highly recommended that you create multiple saves. And so what I actually do is every time I jump in and I build something new, I create a new save. And what it does is it protects you against adding in a new mod that you maybe think sounds really cool, maybe adds in a new functionality or whatever. But then once you open your city, it breaks. Or you reach a point where you want to remove a mod. You no longer like it, you don't like its functionality, so you decide to uninstall it, and then you try to open up that city again, and it no longer works. And so this is actually the fate of Crater Lake and Canalville within Cities Skylines 1. I can't for the life of me get them to open again. Even going through and trying to figure out the mods that I was using, it's just a really arduous process, and it is something that you do still have to do after mods update. And so you do have to kind of wait, sometimes even start a new city. And so when you're playing with mods, you always want to take it with a grain of salt. Be careful. Try new mods, especially if you don't know what you're doing. Try new mods one at a time, test them, see if it works, save in a new save, see if it disrupts anything. It can really save you a lot of time down the road by doing this. And so there actually is another mod that you can use, and it is Skive. So if I'm going to go up here and just go ahead and type in Skive, what this is this is a mod manager, and I do have it installed. I'm not going to show it in this episode, but it is actually a piece of software that you do install on your PC. And what it does is it'll actually go through and help you with any conflicts that you may be having or something like that. And so the next big tip that I will say is always make sure to come through and read some of the comments, because this will really save you a lot of time, especially when troubleshooting problems within the game, or if you're noticing, like a UI button's not there, or you're missing buildings or something. A lot of times people have already posted about that within the comments, and so it's really good to just keep an eye out for that. And so without further ado, what we're now going to do is start going through each mod, and we're going to dive into how they work. All right, so before we jump in, the first thing to note is these extra ones. So unified icon library, lane everywhere, extra lib, these are dependencies. And so sometimes when you hit that little check mark and you decide to install, it'll pop up a little button that says, would you like to install the dependencies for this, or this mod requires you to install this other thing. And so what these are, a lot of times, they're libraries that allow people to create mods within that environment a little bit easier. And Cities Skylines 1 had these as well with Harmony and some of the other ones. And it just creates a mod environment for people so that they can access common information a little bit easier, and the mods end up running a little bit better. And so you always want to make sure to install these. Some of them are a little bit bigger, like Asset Icon Library, but this makes using Find It so much easier. You can use Find It without Asset Icon Library, but then you just get these kind of plain, looking little icons rather than what it actually is. And so I definitely recommend using the dependencies. Let's go ahead and jump right in now. We're going to end up going through all of the mods that I think are essential and how to actually use them. So here we are in the city of Tampere, and we are still having a little bit of issues related to the Economy 2.0 patch. We're kind of in the process of expanding out some things. If you haven't checked out the city, I definitely recommend it. On the last episode, we built out this awesome little harbor, and I absolutely love how it looked. And I had received a few comments asking about mods, and this is really one of the reasons why I decided to do this. A lot of these finer details you can't do within the base game because of conflicts, because the game's just not going to allow you to build them. And you can even see kind of loading in on some of these that you may still lose some assets sometimes, and it just has to do with how the game works. And so the first mod that we're going to touch on that I think is integral, and given it doesn't have as many features as in Cities Skylines 1, but it's still in development, and so we are going to end up gaining those features, and that mod is Move It. And so Move It is a really great mod, and one of the first things I do want to touch on, if you go into this sprocket up here, hit Options, we're going to scroll on down to Move It. And once you're within the menu, if you go to Show Advanced, you have this Hide Move It icon. And so for a lot of people, this can already be checked by default. So if you're not seeing that button down there, go ahead and make sure that that is checked. And so Move It within Cities Skylines 2 is a pretty basic tool, but it does really help you out in a lot of ways, namely with roads. And so with this main tool, the single node, what you're going to do is select nodes, and you can hit page up or page down to change height, or you can just grab onto it and kind of move it around. And I use this most often when trying to capture specific detail. I use it with buildings a lot as well. Like if a building is too far away or something, like if I don't want these alleys, I can go ahead and smash these together, and it just makes it look a little bit more unified. One really cool feature as well, you do have the function to be able to undo. So if you decide that you don't like the move, you can go ahead and undo it, and it'll just bring that tree back, which is really nice. That can really become in handy, especially if you start moving a little too much. And so now, the next tool, Marquee Mode. Marquee Mode can really save you a lot of time, and what it does is, just as the name suggests, it allows you to select things within a marquee selection. So if you want to grab a bunch of things, you can go like this. And this was a tool that I used in Cities Skylines 1 quite a bit in conjunction with the copy tool. Move It in Cities Skylines 2 doesn't have copy yet, and so it is something that will be added eventually, but as of right now it isn't a part of the game, sadly. And then the next tool within the Move It mod is the manipulation mode. And one of the easiest ways to get through this, and this is the way that I most often use, is to actually just hold Alt. And so one of the cool things, and this is a big difference between Cities Skylines 1 and Cities Skylines 2. In Cities Skylines 1, these would be regular nodes, and it was actually quite easy to create nodes just by putting in roads. Well, the whole road system works a little bit different in Cities Skylines 2, and so manipulation mode actually allows you to kind of adjust the smaller nodes that you would have access to in Cities Skylines 1. This also does have some features that you probably would have found within Node Controller or something like that, because now you can choose one of these smaller nodes and be able to adjust the overall flatness or hilliness of the broader node, so in between the two nodes, which is really nice. This can save a lot of time, especially so like a lot of times whenever you're drawing on hilly terrain, you'll have a little bit of a bump. And so if you hold Alt, you can grab one of these smaller nodes, and it is a little tricky sometimes to be able to grab onto them, but if you hover over them, grab them, and then it has two circles. The two circles signify whether it is flat or not. And so if it is flat, then the two circles will be level. If it's not, then the smaller circle will be down if it's raised, or the bigger circle will be down if it's up. And so some really easy functions, and you actually do have a redo function as well. And so I think that is the Move It mod. It's definitely a really easy mod to get into, and it's an easy mod to kind of learn, and it's really indispensable once you start getting into some finer details. All right, so the next one is Anarchy. So Anarchy is something that allows you to place anything within any bounds within the game. And so one of the things that you'll notice, like whenever I'm placing this road, those red conflicts points, that's because of Anarchy. And so Anarchy in Cities Skylines 2, in my not so humble opinion, is not as good as in Cities Skylines 1. And I think it has a lot to do with the code. It's not the mod developer's fault. It's just the way that conflict works in general in this game. There's a lot of conflict points with paths. There's a lot of conflict points with roads. And one of the things that I tend to not really like is that it does, so like if a road even connects close to it, then it can give you a conflict point for something that's not even close by, which can kind of suck. So a lot of times, like pretty much in Tampere, I have to keep Anarchy on most times because of just these conflict points that have developed over my city because of using Anarchy. But Anarchy is something that is hugely beneficial, especially for roads, trees. Like you can now place trees within building parameters, or like to decorate anything. You can go to any building, you can go to your harbors. I mean, if I wanted to place a tree in here, I could. So like I could put a tree right there. It's kind of out of place, but you can if you want to. And so that's really the beauty with Anarchy. And Anarchy can pretty much be used with anything. It's this little circle icon up there. And then if you're ever not sure if you're using Anarchy, it changes your little chirper to this flaming chirper. And so it kind of helps you to know if you're within it or not. All right, so the next mod that we're going to be talking about is 529 tiles. And so this one is very similar to 81 tiles. That's why, it's called 529. That's how many tiles are within the game. And so what this does within the city of Tampere, I went ahead and I had already previously unlocked all tiles, as I didn't really like having purchase everything. Just made it a little bit easier to place down trees and everything. One of the things to keep in mind with the tile upkeep is you can go ahead and adjust it now. I keep it at about 30%, as I feel like that's a more realistic approach and cost when you unlock all the tiles, because when you have all tiles unlocked at 100%, it's really crippling. One of the cool things that you can do with this, though, if you're starting a new city, allocate extra tiles to milestones. And so every time you get a new milestone, you'll get a few extra tiles until you eventually unlock all the tiles within the playable area. And so it is a mod that I do recommend. It allows you to really expand your city out in a bunch of different ways without being constrained by the limitations of the game. And so the next mod that we are going to talk about is the traffic mod. And so the traffic mod is a pretty indispensable tool. It's one that I haven't really actually played around with a whole lot, but it does share a lot of similarities with Traffic Manager. And so once you click an intersection, it'll open up this little tool. And what this is these are all the directions that people can take from a specific lane. And so you can see this one's a dedicated left lane, this is a straight, and this is a straight with a right. And so if we wanted to get rid of that, what we could do is select this node and then come over here and remove it. And so now we have 3 dedicated lanes. And one of the reasons you would do this is, say you had a bunch of traffic that was, turning right and also going straight, and they were backing up in this lane. And so this can really help you to guide the traffic into the lanes that you want them in. Now, one of the things that you do have to be mindful of is lane changes. Lane changes within this game can happen a little bit closer to nodes than in Cities Skylines 1 a lot of times. And so you'll end up getting people kind of weaving in and out of traffic. This is one of the reasons why having lanes that can have 2 can also be beneficial, because then you can limit the lane weaving. So say somebody's coming down this lane and they want to go straight. Well, now they have to change lanes. If not a lot of people are taking a right turn, then it's best to keep it as both. And so that is something that you want to keep in mind. Within the traffic options menu, you can adjust the lane connection width, which is kind of nice, lane connector size, feedback outline width, and those are just the lines that pop up whenever you're adjusting a certain intersection, which is really nice. And so the button for that is usually up here, and you can see that Control R is actually the shortcut for it, which is super beneficial. And so now let's go ahead and jump into the next one, which is Line Tool. So Line Tool is another indispensable tool that I absolutely love. And you can see this kind of unfinished downtown area that I still have. But you can see with these trees and everything, I did most of these with the help of Line Tool. So Line Tool can seem a little complicated at first, but honestly, most of it is right here, and it's actually pretty easy once you figure it out. So when you're trying to make a line, if you want, it's a little bit better if we're working with a certain asset. So let's go ahead and jump out of this. Let's find a stall. All right, so once I have my building, if I go ahead and grab it, you'll see that they're changing variation. If I want that to stop, I want to go ahead and uncheck this dice roll. And so you can also see that they're facing the wrong direction. If I go ahead and go to 90 degrees, what it's going to do is turn them my direction or the opposite direction, depending on which direction I'm coming from. And then if I want to decrease the spacing, just go over to the spacing column, go ahead and drop it down or increase it based off of the size of the asset that you're dealing with. And spacing variation offset, I don't usually do this. This is for if you wanted like some sort of pattern to emerge. I don't really find a lot of scenarios where I think it's best, but it can also create something that might look a little bit more realistic. Again, I've never really used it. You also have this absolute rotation, relative rotation, and you can also go into simple curves, and you can go into circles. And so you can go ahead and make it around a roundabout or something, or whatever you wanted to do. And one of the cool things with this, you can actually draw it and then kind of delete maybe a couple of them and then make an entrance. Which could be cool. Just some detailing ideas. And then that brings us to our next mod, which is the Better Bulldoze tool. So if you go ahead and hit the bulldoze icon, you'll see that I have a bunch of different buttons that aren't in the normal vanilla bulldoze. And so what these icons are is remove sub-elements, remove moving objects and sims, bypass confirmation, remove net lanes, remove markers, and remove surfaces and spaces. And so the 2 that I use most often is remove sub-elements and remove surfaces and spaces. Remove sub-elements allows you to actually go into buildings that have been placed and remove certain aspects of it. One of the cool things with this is you can actually choose a single item. So like if I wanted to just remove one of those and just have one instead of 2, or if I wanted to go in and exact match and take both those water towers away, I could. And what that allows me to do is just kind of fine tune the overall appeal. Now, this doesn't have water towers. The people in the building be like, no, we don't have water. But then along with my second tool, so remove surfaces and spaces, this allows me to remove those spaces where I did the grass or even the default spaces that come with the buildings. And this can be really beneficial, especially if you're using custom spaces a lot. It just saves a lot of time to be able to come back here and kind of delete stuff. And, especially when I'm making these custom back of house areas and everything, it just makes it a little bit easier to work with. These other tools I don't really use as much. The remove markers can be beneficial though. I did end up putting in an invisible path coming through here, and you can kind of see with a lot of buildings, you just have these roads that are connected. So if you wanted to actually kind of adjust these, you could. I haven't gotten into this level of detailing yet, but it is definitely something that we are going to be doing. And along with this tool, it's something that's going to be crucial. And then bypass confirmation and remove objects in sims. This allows you to remove cars. It allows you to delete train tracks or trains that are in motion. And this can be really beneficial whenever you're dealing with freezes or lags or something. I've had to go through and delete a couple of our trains, especially when we first built out this area. We had one that was getting stuck in this area. And so our next mod is extended road upgrades. So if you go into the roads tab, go up to road services, you will see that I have the option to upgrade with a key wall, a retaining wall, an elevated piece, or a tunnel. These are all a part of the extended road upgrades. And the reason I have it is because it saves a ton of time, especially with keys, since there is no way to actually just make keys within the vanilla game for some reason. And so what this allows me to do is actually just build roads and then force them into a key or a retaining wall based off of my liking. So I can even go like this, force it into a key even on flat ground, but then I can come through and actually level out a piece and just make it into a key. So this can really save a lot of time, especially whenever you're building out large sections that require keys. Like when I built this out, I ended up doing extended road upgrades for pretty much all of it. Another key area that I used a lot in was these retaining walls. And there is a little bit of a glitch with them where when you're forcing retaining walls, you'll end up getting this tear every so often. It has to do with the way that the game deals with retaining walls in the ground. And so a lot of times I just leave them there because it can be kind of annoying to have to go back and upgrade them every time. But if you're ever looking for like an aesthetic, a lot of times, like if I'm highlighting a certain area, then I'll go through and actually upgrade them. That brings us to our next mod, which is tree controller. So if we go down to landscaping, go to vegetation, tree controller did add in the option to choose the tree age, but now this has been added to the vanilla game. But now we also have the ability to add in this brush and have these presets. And this is really the main reason why I use this mod. I use the evergreen preset quite often, but I also like the wild deciduous option and the wild brush. And what this does is it's a really simple tool to use to be able to make huge forests or just make an area look a little bit better. Really cool feature though is to be able to do custom sets. So you can hold control, go ahead and unselect trees or select whatever trees you want to do for your map. And then you can keep holding control and go ahead and hit save. And it's now been bound to whatever number you selected, which is nice. Another cool thing that you can do with this mod is to change the tree age. So if you want to go in, you can select a certain amount of trees and force them to be a little bit younger or older. Say if all your trees are dying or all your trees are too young because you were building within the vanilla game, now you can come through and change them all around. And then change tree type. This can also be super beneficial. Say you want to change the tree types for your map. You don't like that it has palm trees or you don't like that it has oak trees. What you can do is select it, choose your tree, and then go ahead and switch it out, which can be really easy and beneficial to use. That brings us to our next mod, which is also within the landscaping tab, and that is the water features mod. And so what this does is exactly as the name suggests, it allows you to place water sources within your map. And I have played around with lakes with this. I haven't done any of them on my episodes yet, but it does allow you to play with water in a really easy way. Whenever we did this bridge, I kind of moved this a little bit. So you have streams, rivers, lakes, and seas. So the only ones that I generally work with is either the brown one or the red one. So if you're building out a stream, if you're building out, like say you want an artificial lake within your city, what you can do, we'll go ahead and get rid of this and we will place it. One of the cool things with this is it has a lot of really cool functions. So your first one is to place water source. So if you grab it, you can go ahead and right click and take it away. You can go ahead and place it again. Your second one is to change the elevation. So the elevation is how high the water goes or how low. So you want to be able to stick this in a spot where it's just going to make sense for your region. You definitely don't want to overflow. That's one of the big things with water is you can overflow your area pretty quickly. Then you have move water source. So if you want to kind of shift it around, say a lot of times I want like a flow. So like in Cities Skylines 1, I would place 2. And then your last one is to change radius. And this is one of the things that you do need to kind of play around with in order to get a big lake like this to fill up. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get rid of this. We're going to go back to lake. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and increase that radius. We're going to go just like that. Go ahead and click it. And then we're going to go to elevation And you're going to see that light blue that's filling up. Well, that's going to be where the water ends up. And so you want to kind of put that at a good spot so that it's not overflowing. And then there you go. So now we have backfilled in the water source that we had previously removed. And so this tool is actually really easy to use and one that I do recommend. And this brings me to our next mod, which is Map Texture Replacer. And so this little icon in the top left is for the mod. So if we go ahead and click on it, you will see that I have the Valkyria map theme. And what this does is it changes the overall look and textures of grass, cliffs, dirt. It doesn't change the water at this moment, but it is probably a function that we will see at some point. But you'll be able to select them, kind of change the overall appearance. And the Valkyria one is one that I like because it has these little gray sprites in there. I think it adds like another layer of depth in there. One of the other ones that I was using is this Vivid Cities. I think the Vivid Cities one looks pretty cool as well. It kind of has this shrub for the grass. This actually was the one that I was using before. Functions that I do tend to use in this is the tiling options. So this allows you to adjust how far or how close the tiling is. So a lot of times for textures, what it is it's just a JPEG. And so you can move it in or out. So if you move it all the way out, you can see how it's kind of smaller. Whereas if you move it all the way in, it's just like this blurry image. And so you want to try to find like a good balance to where I think it looks realistic, but also functional. Like you can kind of see those leaves look a little bit weird. Like I don't know if having those leaves that big would be super realistic. So we'd probably want to go like that. Let's go ahead and go back to the Valkyria one and check that out. We'll go like that. Let's go ahead and check out the tiling now. And I think that looks pretty good. You can still see the sprites, but they're not as bright as they were before. And then the close tiling is for other things, I believe. I'm not even sure what this is for. I don't see anything kind of changing. We'll have to kind of play around with that and see. Same with the dirt. I don't really have a lot of dirt within my game, but if you did have, say you were playing on like a desert map or something, I'm guessing that the dirt would probably change with that. These are tiles, these aren't actually dirt. You guys get the idea. So this is a really good map to just make the game look a little bit better, especially as they add in more features and functionality. It's really going to be a nice mod to have. And this brings me to our next mod, which is Find It. So once you have Find It installed, you will now get this little hourglass down here. One of the cool things with Find It as well is it comes with the little picker icon. So if you go ahead and select this, you can select any little building or even sub elements a lot of times. And what it's going to do is open up Find It and allow you to choose that building. And so as long as you have plop the globables, you'll be able to place this down and not have to worry about this building disappearing at some point in the future. Find It is probably my most utilized mod. And it has a lot of great functionalities. So it allows you to basically select anything within the game that has its own little function. So there are certain things within the game that you can't still choose, which kind of sucks. Like if you come over here to our cargo yard, you can't find these cranes within the game. And I think it's just because they're embedded with this asset, but you can't find the decals, the containers, even some of these little buildings, a lot of the fences. You can pretty much find everything within the game, and it allows you to take your detailing to whole new heights. And this is one of the things that I used with this. This is how I got my little stalls. This is how I got the pergolas. This is how I get a lot of the things that I work with, like these boulders, even the benches and stuff, because they're just not within the regular game for some weird reason. One of the things that you want to utilize with Find It, so you have the favorites icon. Every time that you go through and you find that you use a certain thing a lot, you can go ahead and click that. And what it's going to do is put it into your little favorites folder. With updates, this does tend to get reset, and that's why my favorites is actually empty right now. I'd spent a lot of time kind of filling it up, and then it got all reset. So within that, you have networks, and this is where you get all of your tracks, bridges, roads, intersections, stuff like that. Your next one is buildings. And this is how, like whenever I'm plopping down buildings, I tend to use the buildings tab. So I'll go into buildings and I'll search up, residential. And one of the cool things with this is, say you're looking for a specific size, you can go ahead and do like 3x. And what that's going to do is give you all your 3x assets. Or say you're looking for like a by 5. So we'll go X5. And what that's going to do is give us our 5 deep assets. And this can really save you a lot of time whenever you're trying to place down specific buildings. And then each tab has its own respective buildings. You can even go down to specialized or service buildings. And then you have miscellaneous buildings all the way at the end, which only has like a couple little buildings and like your old mill and stuff like that. Your next big tab is your trees. These are where you get trees, shrubs, rocks, planters, and props like that. There's not really a lot of planters and stuff like that in the current game, but as we expand more assets, this is really going to become a big asset. big thing to have. This is where you get your spawners. So if you want to start seeing some more deer or forest animals or eagles, you can go ahead and click this and then place it within the game. You do need to be careful with some of these. You can get a little glitchy and cause crashes by placing these in weird places. Same with the props. Like if you start placing down certain props, a lot of times it can cause your game to crash. So your next one is props, and props is probably my most widely used. If you're on this little asterisk, it allows you to actually scroll through all props, but you can go through miscellaneous props, surface areas, residential props, commercial props, industrial props, service props, fences, park props, decals. It's really just the whole gamut. You can pretty much get everything within the game. Lights. And this brings us to our last tab, which is vehicles. So if you want to place any vehicles of any kind, or even like specific trailers for detailing, this is where you're going to find them. And the cool thing, this definitely has a lot more vehicles than in Cities Skylines 1, especially in the vanilla game. You really have a whole host of different things that you can place, like train cars. So like if you're doing a yard, you can place down certain train cars and stuff like that. And just make it look a lot more realistic, which is always fun. A lot of times little details like this can go a long ways to make your area, whatever you're building, just look a lot better. And this brings us to our last two mods, and that is Extra Assets Importer and Asset Manager. An asset pack manager. So if you go into options, you can see Extra Assets Importer and Asset Pack Manager. These are currently the top two mods for importing assets or decals into the game. I'm not even sure if there's other ones, but these are relatively stable now, even though they are still considered experimental. So once you start getting into custom assets, you really got to be careful. It can cause a lot of crashes with certain assets, especially once you start placing them down. And so I do highly recommend to always be playing with multiple saves whenever using these mods. I generally don't use as many assets as I do decals. With Extra Asset Importer, you now get this button. You also get this with the Extra Detailing mod as well. But what it has is three tabs. So within the surface tab, you literally have every surface that you are able to place within the game. And I also do have the area bucket tool, which gives you this nice little button. Then what it does is it allows you to just come in here and place down these decals pretty easily, especially with the area bucket tool, and just, make things look a little bit better, especially with surfaces. So this would be comparable to, Surface Painter or something like that within the first Cities Skylines. And so now, the second tab, this is really where the magic comes in, is your decals. So decals, I pretty much have every decal on PDX Mod installed. There are certain issues sometimes when placing these. A lot of times on load, it won't load them all, and so sometimes you'll have to reload. But this is really where I get like my, little tree grates. This is where I get any lettering. This is where I get cracks. So like back in my back of house areas, I did like weathering, and I did some tagging as well. So like these would be your little back of house break areas with trash and stuff. Like they're not customer facing, and so a lot of times they just don't look as good as on the other side. You can come in here and get like bigger, stains. You can do parking decals. You can really do a lot. There's really quite a bit of decals, which is awesome. And then your last tab is net lanes. So this is where you're going to get like your little pathways. Say you wanted to do, like a bus path or something within your roads. This is really how you're going to do it, which is kind of cool. I haven't played around with this too much, but it'll allow you to do like specific little bus lanes, which is kind of nice. Your next one is fences, and this is definitely the best fence tool within the game. It also has some hedges as well, but it allows you to draw it in and not really have to worry about a lot of the functionality that you have within Find It. You can do curves and stuff a lot easier. One of the things that does suck though is within Find It, whenever you use these, you can actually adjust like the color change. Whereas in this, a lot of times, like if I place this down, the next version will be a different color, which does kind of suck. And then your next one is road markings. And so this is where if you're building out custom little roads within your decals, say you did, big concrete slab and you want to have, some decals to make it look like a road, that's how you would do it. So you can actually kind of see this little space over here is a little bit empty. It looks like I missed something. Looks pretty good. We still do have a little tear. I'll have to go back and fix that. And so I think that's it. We definitely went over a ton of mods. If you guys have any questions or you feel like I could dive a little bit deeper into any of them, go ahead and let me know. My goal was to just kind of do a broad overview. And so I hope that this is helpful to anybody out there who hasn't used any of these mods. And I hope that this opens the gate to people detailing more, because this game really, once you start peeling back a lot of those layers, it really is fun, and I do believe that this is going to be better than Cities Skylines 1. And so thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, you will definitely enjoy the episode on your screen, and I will catch you on the next one.